Hello, dear viewer and listener, and welcome to Bergkamp Wonderland. We are a Frozen tribute act, and tonight we're going to build a snowman. With me is Drew from Not No Sunny No More, probably, you call it fall, didn't you, Drew? A fall New York, that doesn't sound right. An autumnal New York. There you go, that's not better.
Yeah, it's no longer sunny here. It's actually quite dreary and rainy, which should be familiar to you too. But thanks for having me back.
Oh, it's always a pleasure. Talking about pleasures, here he is. It's the cheeky pirate with his non-working keyboard and his cats in the background heckling him to get on with it. How are you?
Yes. Hello, Danny. How are you?
Oh, well, people go and Google methotrexate and see what it's for, and then see what it does to your bowels.
All don't.
It took you 40 seconds to mention bowels. It's a record.
We actually had a question about a bowel movement, and I didn't know what it meant. Kris had to explain it to me. So that's coming up later. You can look forward to that, boys and girls. It's going to be a poo question.
Right. We're all itching for that one. Yeah, literally.
Oh, dear. Right. We've had a little chat about how we're going to do this. No one gives a damn about the Crystal Palace game. So if you want to go and listen to that, our highest listened to show of the season so far, go back to that and listen to the ABW live that they did. Very good show. Lots of interactions. Really interesting. We just picked one bit from that game, haven't we, Kris? What have we decided to pick from? It's not the ball boys. It's not the kit. It's not the socks. It's not the shoes. What was it?
The pies.
Pie.
Yes. No, we just thought we'd touch on our good friend Granit, didn't we? Just to have a little well, not a line drawn, because we still don't really know what the future holds or what's going to happen. The suggestion is he will miss the Wolves game, I believe. Various reports. I mean, we don't need to go into what happened. I think anyone knows what happened now.
Well, I didn't realise until I was listening to Harry's show today, and he had Elliot Yankee Gunner on there. It was fantastic. Go find that. Chronicles of a Gooner. That's a really interesting half-hour chat they had, and Elliot actually spoke slowly so I could understand what he was saying. And I thought that he threw his armband down, and Elliot was saying that he didn't. He kind of threw it towards Aubameyang. Yeah. The Aubameyang just saw it drop to the floor, and then he said the look that Aubameyang gave Xhaka was quite a start. I didn't see any of that. I don't know. Maybe it's because I was ill at the time again, or what happened. So just quickly run through the bullet points of what happened.
Well, as usual, I mean, I know this will surprise a lot of people listening to this podcast, but our fan base massively blew everything out of proportion, which I know is a huge shock to everyone because they don't usually do that at all. I mean, look, it was from my perspective, listening to it, seeing it, and taking it all in afterwards. There's sort of there's understandings on both sides. The issue I had with the whole event, and again, for anyone who didn't see it, he substituted the fans. There was a bit of an ironic jeer, I believe, when his name was read out pre-game. Then as he's being substituted, there was a sort of almost a rumble of thank God for that kind of going around the ground. We've got a few people we know that were in the ground, Fyffes being one of them, saying that the booing and the vitriol only really started when he started egging it on, and when he very slowly sauntered off the pitch. And I think what we're seeing with Xhaka at the moment is we're seeing his qualities as a footballer, but we're seeing his almost weakness as a personality. And I don't mean that in like a bad sense, but I think the pressure has got to him. And here's where I'm torn, because part of me sort of goes, do you know what? I get it. Like I do, I think we've all had days where, we just want to scream and shout and let it all out. I'm quoting for the will.i.am here, but I do kind of get it. And the whole gesture of the armband, the way I look at it is, if that happens in a Premier League game where a captain is substituted, because just say, for example, a captain gets an injury and he's being forced off, done his hamstring, takes his armband off, flings it. I'm doing this on camera, you can't see this, but flings it in an underarm motion towards his colleague. His colleague goes to catch it, doesn't catch it, goes on the ground. Nobody says a thing. The problem you've got here is that when he's substituted, you can clearly see the body language, the shoulders slump. He looks to the heavens. There's clearly like an outward visual representation that he's not happy with the decision. I don't think he played really badly, but he didn't play fantastically. It wasn't his best game, and he hasn't been great this season for a while, really. So there's your first issue with the armband. Then your second issue with the, fuck off to the fans, quote unquote. I saw a few people sort of saying, actually, he only says it, to Emery. That's been proven that's not the case. He clearly says it twice. And I do get it. The bit I have the issue with is that people saying that he was abused, I think is wrong. Yes, if you're saying, did some of the fans tell him to fuck off and all this? Are some of the fans a little bit precious? A little bit, well, I'll scream abuse at you, but how dare you scream abuse at me? That's a little bit holier than thou. But I think when you're a professional footballer, you can't react like that. It's part of your job. It's part of your profession to be professional. And whilst you can remember the Wayne Rooney one in the World Cup, screaming down the camera, and he got a lot of abuse for that. There's passion with the UN, of course, and then there's fire, and then there's stupidity. And I just felt that he crossed into that line. And I think the bigger issue here is that he might be the players' captain, and that's fine. You can have dressing room leaders, but he just isn't. He isn't what we want as a captain. And we've been here before, William Gallas. We have been here before. And we've had some amazing captains in the past, and we've also had some pretty bad ones. Van Persie is another one that jumps to mind. The whole thing leaves me feeling a bit sour, and I'm intrigued to know what Drew's thoughts are on this, because obviously saw enough of him when he was captain of Gladbach, and he is still captain of the Swiss side. He has got leadership qualities, but I feel like we've gone beyond the point where this is going to end well for him, and I feel that he's taken a lot of this criticism personally. The Instagram stuff and all that, I completely understand why he's taken that personally. You can't condone that at all. But there's a difference between some fans basically saying you're shit and then you telling them to fuck off and then basically going radio silent when, I think Josh made this point in our group, he could have just come out and said, you know what, I didn't like the abuse, I reacted the wrong way and I'm sorry. But instead of that, he's gone silent. The club have said their piece about him having support and whatnot, and we're all sat here going, that's the captain of our club. So what's your thoughts on it, Drew? What's your overall thoughts on the whole situation?
I was muted, but I chuckled when he sarcastically was talking about overreacting. For me, I feel both parties overreacted. I think that's been spurred on by the feelings that both of them now have been conveying for months on end. You've got our fan base, as you say, kind of we crossed the line. Let's be fair. Even you can look back at something recent with a lot of the vitriol that Arsene Wenger suffered. A lot of fans wanted him out. That's all well and good. That's your opinion. But to go the extra mile that our fans love to do, I think is the problem. Players aren't stupid. They see this every day. And even if you don't have events like that, targeting them specifically, they still see it and they still make note of it. So a lot of the players know that it's possible behavior that they then could be suffering of, could be a target of. Certainly the way Xhaka has been treated on social media, I think that's where his frustration comes from. I think he made an assumption of how the fans were reacting. It was kind of a microcosm of how he's been treated previously off the pitch. And I think that's why he's reacted the way he has. And also a lot of the fans are kind of getting tired of him. You don't want a lot of the fans keep saying, you see it on social media, that he's not my captain. He was voted. I don't want him as captain, so I don't have to respect him as such. And they treat him a little bit differently. And that's their reaction. They're getting fed up with the fact that he's been largely inconsistent, certainly this season, arguably last season. I think things boil over, and I think cooler heads just didn't prevail. For me personally, though, I'm kind of with you. Again, in any profession, it doesn't have to be about football. In any job, if I go to my job tomorrow and I suffer criticism from a parent, am I going to lash out against the parent? No, I'm going to get fired on the spot. I have to maintain my level of composure, my level of professionalism, try to work through it. And if I want to vent later to my director, or if I'm having a conversation with like my brother or whatever it might be, I vent them. Don't vent at the target of the people who are targeting you. It just doesn't shine quite quite nicely on you. And I feel like that's the issue, especially as your club captain. That's my issue with Xhaka. I feel like he handled his response incorrectly. Kind of rise above the fact that our fans are always going to operate in this manner. Not all of them, obviously, but certain sections. And then, again, go on with the job. If you want to address it later in your post-match comments. Address it later on if you want to send a letter to the fans, however you want to handle it. But I think in that moment, I think he's handled it incorrectly. And I think that certainly, like I said, as Fyffes said, I think that, kicked fans to another gear, and then it spiraled out of control, and then Arsenal fan base that we're all used to. I think that's kind of my thoughts about that. When you look back at his time at Gladbach, he's largely still highly appreciated at that club. The fans absolutely loved him, wished him nothing but the best when he left, still sing his praises. He's highly thought of and respected amongst the Swiss footballing community. But what English fans aren't understanding is that there's a different fan culture in Germany. There's a different fan culture with Swiss football as well. People also forget that fans own the controlling shares of football clubs in Germany. So fans have a right to voice their opinion when things are going wrong. It's not that he's not used to that. It's the manner in which fans voice displeasure in English footballing culture compared with German footballing culture is massively different. I think people will cite the Mesut Ozil example as, something that can be counteractive to my statement, but that's along different lines than just football criticisms. That's a little bit different. In terms of Granit Xhaka, when he had poor performances, he wasn't harassed on social media for months on end. His ill things weren't wished against whoever he was dating at the time. His family wasn't attacked. It's different. Fans voice their opinions differently depending on when you are. In Italy, fans have protests outside the training ground for 5 days. Sean will tell you that. When one bad result happens, they want to burn the training ground to the ground. So everyone reacts differently, but overall, I do think the players just have to kind of get on with it. And it sucks to say that, but again, you're never going to go through life in your profession and not suffer criticism. A lot of the times it's going to be over the top. You still have to maintain a level that is respectful to yourself, to your colleagues, to your teammates, to the coaching staff, and to the club and the fans. And again, it just sucks that fans take it to a level that a lot of times it shouldn't be, but you kind of just have to rise above it. And I think maybe he is struggling with that. I think a lot of players come to England and struggle, depending on the club, with the way the fans respond. It's just not the same way when you live on the continent. Fans are just not ever, obviously, but it's just different. And I think that could be one of the main issues that I think he's had for the entirety of his Arsenal tenure. And it wouldn't surprise me if it's 3+ years of it now. It could easily just get under your skin, and I think that's why he's overreacted. But I don't think he should have overreacted. So
no, I agree with that. I think everything you said is spot on there. Danny, I want to ask you, just twisting it sort of in a different direction in terms of looking at the manager's role in this. A lot of our fans have jumped on him for this and said, I've seen a few people actually tweet and said that it's Unai Emery's fault because he set him up to fail. I find that a bit strong. I think that's why would you self-sabotage? It makes no sense to me. I think he meant well with this whole 5 captains thing. I think he wanted to back the players, and Xhaka is clearly a very positive influence in the dressing room. I guess my argument, like I said before to Drew there, my argument would be, well, you don't need to give him the armband for that. You just say you're the club captain, you deal with the fines, you deal with the training ground stuff, and we'll look at the easiest way to spin it is we want a young captain, so we're going to go with Bellerin or Holding, or we want somebody for the future. Granit doesn't strike me as the sort of guy who would sulk just because he wasn't given an armband. Like, he doesn't. So do you think that it's part of the manager's fault why it's come to this, or is it just the fact that, in the nicest possible way, the player doesn't fit the club? Like, he just doesn't. Doesn't mean he's not a good player, but he doesn't seem to fit what we're trying to do.
I think he has had issues with the fans on and off a lot of the time. Him, Kolasinac, they've been players that the fans have gone, they haven't warmed to. I think that could be part of the problem. But he's been made captain. I don't agree with the 5 captains thing. I think it should be a captain, vice captain, like it should be like it used to be. You don't need to be made captain to act like a captain on the field. You should have 11 captains out there. For me, my captain would be Aubameyang because everybody loves him, and it might help him. Well, his new contract will help him keep at the club. My vice captain would be Bellerin. and that's the easy way to go around with it. But then you look, I'm just looking at his stuff here. 3 of the last 5 games he's been subbed off by Emery. 72nd minute against Villa, 69th minute Sheffield United, and 61st minute against Palace. Then you've got to look at the things surrounding why he came off. Well, we were 2-0 up and we gave away a 2-goal lead. Ended up it was 2-2. And then he's been taken off for Saka so that we could go and play 5 players up front or whatever formation it was going to do, which is going to leave us open even more in the centre of midfield. Now, I think one of the main problems with him is the fact that he isn't a DM. And although he's not been asked to play in the rock solid DM role where you stay there and you cover those back 2 and you don't move, none of our players have been asked to do that. But when you've got him being the furthest back player, and Emery still says to him, well, when they're playing it out from the back, we're going to give the ball to Guendouzi to come in and get the ball. You step to one side, Guendouzi will then get it and pass it around. Well, he's got to be thinking, well, you're taking so much of my game away. His game, from what I can see, and I'm no expert, is to break up play, is to go and get the ball off of people. So whoever's in, Torreira should be sitting in front of the back 2, and then he will be the last man in the midfield to stop people running through. He gets the ball, he gives it to Xhaka. Xhaka's passing rates are really, really good. Some of the games this season, he's had 80-90% pass success rates. That's his job. So Torreira gives it to Xhaka. Xhaka then picks who he wants to give it to. Admittedly, Xhaka has done some absolutely god-awful balls at times during his Arsenal time, but majority of the time he's not. Majority of the time he does that job okay. And then whoever he gives it to then creates the play, and then we hopefully go on and have an attack at goal. But you're asking Xhaka to do an uncomfortable job. And when there is no... Like, I want in my midfield, I want a DM, I want a CM, and I want a creative player, which would be a Torreira, Xhaka, Ramsey. That would be the ideal thing, like it was last season when Torreira got 5 man of the matches out of 6 games, I think it was. And then you have very defined roles. But at the moment, there is no defined role. Guendouzi is all over the place. Like I say, running around like a headless chicken. Guendouzi's fantastic. I love him. But sometimes, I mean, running a headless chicken thing could be good. But sometimes he's doing too much. He's in every position. He gets left out of position. And then Xhaka is having to go, well, not only am I being the last man of the midfield to break up the play, I'm now having to cover Guendouzi when he's playing left wing, right back or rush goalkeeper. And then I've got no one to build a partnership with. I was quite surprised. I've just looked. The player who's played more games than anyone else this season for us is Ceballos. He's played 15. The next one's played 13. And so that you want to be able to build a relationship with the players in and around you and know your role. And I think that's what Emery's taken away from him. He's not allowing him to be the best that he can be, and he's having to do so much stuff, and that's making him angry. And when I saw I missed the happening live. I listened to our show, and then I watched Match of the Day. And as he's walking off, the only people I could see that were giving him grief as he's walking off along the halfway line is people down at the clock end, people standing up, waving their arms, being angry at him. But as he's going down the tunnel, a woman stands up and she's applauding him. There's other people applauding him. And I just think it's everything's all built up. And if you're a new dad, which he is, or they got a new kid, life isn't going to be easy. Like Harry was saying today, that is really tough. You're not getting enough sleep. Life isn't like it was before. You've been given the captaincy when maybe you didn't. Your life would be easier if you weren't the captain. You're not being asked to play in your best position. I think all of these things, it doesn't excuse what has happened, but also it doesn't excuse what these arseholes have been doing on social media. That is completely out of order. But Drew brought up an interesting point. Imagine if he'd have been walking off and the fans would have gathered around him and demanded that he gives them his shirt back, like happened in Italy recently. I think the kind of things that happen all over the world, you've got it easy compared to, I mean, like in Germany, they're a lot more respectful. They are like a giant community. The 51, I think it's 51-49 thing it's called, unless you're Rasenball. And there's one other club, but we're not going to go into that. So I think it's just different ways and different things from different countries. And I think he's seen the bad side of it. But Arsenal fans are shitty. We've always got a scapegoat. I saw the video again last night of when Aboot was taken off and Silvestri come on. How can you do that to a player? I've never booed a player in my life. I shouted at Bergkamp once to sort his life out. He sorted his life out. He went on to be a legend. That's it. I once called Robbie Keane a big nose pikey. Oh no, it wasn't. It was Matt Letizia. I called him a big nose pikey. So that's the level of abuse I go to. I don't believe in abusing players because they're out there trying to make me happy, and if I make them unhappy, they're not going to make me happy. I've carpentered that.
You did, but all good points. we should probably move on to last night, shouldn't we? Really?
Before we do, Drew, have you got anything you want to add to that before we move on? Because you're very polite being on mute rather than shouting at us.
No, I think we touched on pretty much everything we probably really could. I don't know. For me, Xhaka came out with a statement today, and people are already complaining about that as well, saying, well, he didn't actually directly say the words, "I'm sorry," so he could fuck off. It's like, well, what do you want? This is what I mean. It's like he's trying to squash the issue. He's apologized in his own way. He's trying to say, I love this club. I love playing for this club. I want us to support each other. Let's move on together and move past it. And everyone's still finding something to moan about. That's my issue. I just feel like the last 4 or 5 years with this fan base has been, it's always this, it's just like people are trying to find something to complain about, anything, because they're not, if we're honest with ourselves, they're just not happy with the overall situation of the club. We're not competing for the league at any point soon. We're not in Champions League. We've bottled chances to win Europa League. A lot of people aren't happy with the manager. A lot of people aren't happy with some of the business we've done. Some of the players we've let go. Everyone just wants to have that sort of unifying thing they want to complain about. And I think that's a lot of where the issues come from. And I think more people agree that they don't want Granit Xhaka at the club, or at bare minimum, at least they don't want him as captain of the club. And I think that's kind of a unifying driving force in terms of a focal point to put some of that vitriol targeted at something. And it's just like, there's no point. Like if he's tried to apologize in his own way, like this isn't third grade where you have to say, I'm sorry. And because then you could say, oh, well, he said he was sorry, but did he really mean it? It's just being sarcastic. Yeah. I don't buy it. You know what I mean? Then they'll find something else to complain about. So that's, for me, that drives me absolutely up the wall.
Yeah.
And there's just no point in he said his piece, say, all right, move past it, see how we can move on. And, next time he gets selected for the team, applaud him, don't boo him. Like when the team sheet comes out, don't go to social media and saying, how could Emery start him? Just get behind the players now, move past any of the issues. We have enough issues as a club already. Stop creating other ones. Just move on. It's simple.
It's man shouts at cloud, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's like, oh, cloud that shouted it. It'd be interesting to see how long he's left out for, because I think back to could make a show about this. What would Arsene do? But I think if this had happened under his tenure, he'd have had a mysterious injury for about a month now, wouldn't he? He'd have just been sort of quietly taken out the back and given some. In fact, probably under Arsene, he'd have probably been given some time off when he was a dad. He probably would have just been given that time off under quiet. Oh, he's got a bit of a hamstring injury. I think probably that's where Unai's gone wrong as well. I think he's tried to play him through this bad form and has arguably played him into a worse position. The only other thing I was just going to quickly mention was how funny and how time out of the side can change people. Everybody loves Mustafi now. Have you noticed this? Everybody's yeah, because and do you know why? And this is probably where I think Xhaka could learn a thing or two.
Humility.
Yeah, Mustafi is clearly. Now, don't get it wrong. Some of that interview he gave, I think it was the Spiegel. He gave the interview when he said, like, basically, he was harassed by this journalist. Are you the third worst defender in the world? And he basically just took it and went, do you know what? I've not been good enough, and I have made mistakes, and I'm sorry about that. And he did the whole sorry about the clean sheet thing, didn't he? The tweet, and he's taken it the right way, and he's clearly just a guy who is just trying to play football. He held his hands up for the goal last night and said, I'm sorry that I didn't give the club the best start with my own goal, whatever. And it's like, do you know what? Fair play to him. He's not the best footballer. We know it's not worked out for him, but rather than sitting there and going, oh, boo-hoo me, he's kind of just got on with it. I'm not saying, before anyone says anything, I'm not saying that justifies the social media and all that. But, that, for me, no, for me, if I'm in charge of Arsenal Football Club, the very first thing I do when I come in is I ban all social media. Simple. You just get every player and you say, no, if you wanna have a marketing account for your Adidas stuff and your Nike stuff, that's fine. Basically the only thing that your Twitter account tweets is new boots or whatever. Fine, no problem. That's your sponsorship. That's you. But you do not run your own social media. You do not go on Twitter.
What you don't do is go to a profile like what Troops did. Troops seems to have changed his tune lately, and he seems to be a little bit more thinking about what he does. But he just did a thing of him giving the bird of his stadium to the back to the stadium, and Aubameyang's account liked it. Now whether that was Aubameyang a lot, we don't know. And then later, Lacazette did one as well.
The thing with those guys, though, is, and we've done this to death. We don't need to go over it, over and over again. But the thing with those guys, with Troops and with the guy whose name we shan't speak of. Yeah, and to be fair, and like even Robbie's a nice enough bloke. They're making money.
Bloke.
They're making money. Do I agree with how they make money? Do I agree with the way that they present themselves as this? Oh, we're the voice for the fans. We're here to get the reactions. No, you're not. You're there to make money. Let's not bullshit the fans. Let's not sit there and say, oh, we're here as a fan channel and we just want the best for the club. Bullshit. You hounded out or helped to hound out the previous manager. You're now trying to hound out the current manager. You've been caught on camera basically admitting that you structure shows to make money, and a lot of you are full of shit. But at the same time, I can kind of grudgingly respect the fact that you are making money by marketing yourself very, very well. And, Pierre-Emerick Aubameyang is a grown adult. If he wants to be friends with, the personality formerly known as Troops, because it's clearly not his actual personality, they might be mates. They might go for beers every Thursday night and a curry with Del Boy. We don't know that. So if that's their friends, and if Alex Lacazette gets on with, that's up to them. They're grown adults, but don't then go on social media and give all this. Oh yeah, we're all behind the fans. We're the voice for the fans. Oh, you can fuck off, blood. Sorry, mate. Like, you don't speak for the majority. You just don't. You speak for hits and clicks. And you make money off it. And you know what?
An age range.
Yeah, don't. I think too many people get sucked up into that sort of sphere of thinking, oh, well, because social media is talking about it, that's the view of everybody. And I think that's where we go wrong. Like Joe said, too many people read into what too many people. I said to JC the other day, sheep. Too many sheep.
It's the mob mentality. But you look, it's I feel for people who write like John Cross and all these other people. It's not the quality of what you're writing, although John Cross and all these people are top fine quality. Not saying anything bad about that, but it is the quantity. It's what you can say in a title. Sometimes they don't even make up their own titles. I've been told that, but it's how many people you can get saying stuff so they can come to their websites, they can get clicks, and then they can get the advertisers. It's not just people like Robbie and his podcast, which are all fine people, and I suppose outside of that, like I follow a few of them, and I'm good. I'm friends with the judge, and I follow Claude, and we have a little chat every now and then. They're all very nice people, but it's that whole thing of outrage culture. What can I say to get views? And whether you're doing it, whether we put Emery out, that's it, as the title of this podcast, or whether you've got the next level up, or the top level when it comes to podcasts, whether it's Robbie and his lot, or whether you've got the red top newspapers, or whether you've got the Guardian and the Times and stuff like that. It's all around getting people to come and look at what you're saying, whether it be pointless or whether it be whimsical or anything like that. The whole thing is generated online for you to come just to see advertisers. That's all it is. Whereas in the old days, I'm going on about the old days again. What would all of these people have done? I was saying to you, Kris, before the show started, in the 2003-04 season, they would have had nothing to write about. What would have happened then? And that's what I look back at. Or if I look back at the days of the George Graham days, if you'd have I nearly said the C word then, if you'd have been horrible to a player like that, the player would probably come over and lump you like Cantona did.
That was highlighted, wasn't it? Right, seeing abuse out the window at Highbury. It's a different era. Imagine, just sidebar, imagine if George did what he did then now. Can you imagine? Or Arsene or Tony Adams if they'd have had the issues they had now. Christ on a bike. Should we talk football? Because I feel like we should.
Yeah, I was going to ask you a question about that. It is, going from for one pariah to another ex-pariah. I'm only an ex-pariah. Half a denari. That's wasted unless you've seen The Life of Brian. Mesut Ozil. Now, I've been moaning about Ozil because it is like watching the world's best juggler struggling to juggle with one ball. And he's the most talented player at the club. You've seen some of the stuff he pulled off last night. Now, he did that for 60 minutes last night. I had a bloke tweet me and say, Ozil's still shit, is he?
Don't get me started. There's a few people, you know who you are. Dan, I'm looking at you, Dan, who tweeted a few things saying, the high press as a result, Ozil scores, Ozil gets this as well. I'm gonna very gently just back this one to Drew because
Good.
I've got my view.
Shocking.
But yeah, I've got my views. But I'm genuinely interested to know because I think all three of us love the guy and talent. Absolutely no issue. I want to know what you made of that performance, Drew. Because and one quick thing, I'll just shoehorn in before I let you go on that one. The people that gave Emery criticism, you can criticize certain things about him, that's fine. But to say the substitution was bad, blah blah blah, it was clearly. I think the press conference he said it was clearly stated to the player and the manager that it was agreement he'd pay 60 minutes because he's likely to be in the squad on Saturday. So anyone that's saying agenda, well, yeah, I mean that would be interesting now. But anyone saying, oh, it's the agenda and he cost us the game, blah blah blah. Come on, rein it in. But yeah. A mental game, Drew. Absolutely crackers. I mean, 5-5. I mean, I thought there'd be goals, not that many. But before we sort of go into the game itself, what did you think? Was that Mesut sort of just gently reminding the manager that when he's right and he's at it, he's still got it? I
think so, and I don't think anyone seriously thought that he doesn't have it anymore. I think, again, this goes for what we were just talking about outrage culture, where people don't analyze players anymore with logic and sensibility. It's very black and white, forgetting the 99% gray area that exists. I think for me, as Dan just pointed out, Mesut Ozil is 100% still the most gifted footballer at the club. I don't think anyone in their right mind could really suggest otherwise. I think most fans who take issue with him is the fact that, and even I can say this in a minute, that he has not been that consistent player that you need. And I think the issue compounds itself with a lot of the fans when they look at it and say, he's supposed to be our marquee player, but he's being painfully inconsistent at times, and we're then paying him this amount of money. Personally, people have to understand that money is an issue where players are paid what they're worth. Mesut Ozil gets paid that much money because he makes the club money, but also he is a superstar in terms of his profile in world football, so he commands that much money. I think that's where it begins and ends. Fans wouldn't argue if Aubameyang was making $300K a week, he's scoring goals. They wouldn't argue with it, but he's not at that level because when you look at it over the course of his, I guess when you compare things, Mesut Ozil is players don't get paid money just based off of footballing anymore. It's about social media. It's about the fans that pull in. It's about sponsorship and naming rights. There's all these other things that go into why players are paid what they're paid, which is why Messi and Ronaldo get paid what they're paid. And players of that ilk get that much money. It's that way in any sport. You see the same thing in the NBA and in American football and baseball. Players command money based off of things that aren't just sporting anymore. So when fans complain about his wages, that sort of gets me a little bit riled up. I think that's the poor argument. You can argue 100% about what he's producing on the pitch relative to how good of a player he actually is, and does it help us or not. And I'm of the opinion because as Kris is, and Dan, as you guys know, and Kris knows as well, because I coach, and Kris, you coach, and no matter how good a player is, if they don't continuously earn their place in the 11, you're not going to play them. It doesn't matter how good they are, because then it shows that if players are just good enough because they're playing just because they're a good player, you still have to earn your place. If you're not performing in terms of your form, if you're not really doing what's required of you in training, then you shouldn't be playing. So for all we know, Mesut Ozil could have been struggling in those areas. We do know for a fact that he was struggling on the pitch. We don't know about training. I don't attend training. You guys don't attend training, so we can't really speak to that. But in terms of what he's done on the pitch, he hasn't lived up to the kind of player that we've seen him be for the entirety of his career up to, say, 2 years ago, for better or worse. So I do think he has something to prove. I thought last night was a good time to prove it. People are arguing and saying, he played against Liverpool's B team. But when you look at it, Liverpool's midfield cost £140 million. So he still had to combat against, James Milner, Adam Lallana was in there, Ox was in there, Naby Keita started. Like, there were very good players in that 11, especially centrally, and he still had to perform against them. And obviously, he went with a young back four, Klopp did, and Joe Gomez was the senior defender in that team, so that sort of tells you all you need to know. Sepp Vandenberg is a very good young player, but he's only a Dutch under-19 international, so he's still not there yet. He's very good. He's going to be very good, but he's not there yet. And it showed because he made some errors yesterday. But he still had to perform because all those young kids, because Klopp gives chances to youth, they're on the clock as well because they have to prove to him he needs to be that need to be kept in the fold for the first team moving forward. So it's not like they were just there to go through the motions. They had something to prove to their manager. Mesut Ozil something to prove to Unai Emery. And I think he delivered. At every positive move we had yesterday, Mesut Ozil was highly involved. He got that lovely assist to Maitland-Niles as well. And I think it showed because once he came off, we stopped creating. So yesterday was a microcosm of when Ozil is on, he does in fact make us better. You can't argue against that. The issue is, for most fans, myself included, is that he's not there every single match. He does not perform to the level that he is capable every time he plays. And I think that is where the argument should begin and end. If he's going to be consistent, he should consistently play. If he's not going to be consistent, he can't consistently play. You have schools of thought that, you can play a player into form and try to force issue. Sometimes that works, and sometimes it doesn't work. Sometimes taking a player out of the firing line works, and sometimes it doesn't work. Every player is different, and this is where we can come on to another debate about Emery, whether we have it today or not. It's different, but Emery has been criticized almost at every single club he's managed for being poor at man management. So the fact that we now have exacerbated issues with individual players, as Ozil, Granit Xhaka, Mustafi maybe, and a couple others, this just isn't his forte. And I think that also exacerbates the problem. I think this could have been managed easier under a different manager. And I'm not saying that this is like a reason to fire Emery by example. So I'm not trying to have that debate. But it doesn't make the issue any easier. In fact, it makes it more difficult, especially when you're dealing with big personalities, big egos, big reputations in the game. Mesut Ozil is a player that should be playing every week for us because that's how good he is. That's the kind of player he is. He does make us better. But, if he's going to perform every match like he did yesterday, then he should be playing. And if he's not, then he shouldn't be playing regularly. And I think that's kind of where it is for me. So.
Yeah, I agree with pretty much every word of that. I think I think the luxury player tag is a bit harsh, but he's a player that he's what I'd call a porridge player. When everything's just right, he's fine. When everything's not quite right, then there's things that are off. What he did show last night was that he can make the difference. And I'll hold my hands up and say, for a while now, I've just thought I've just kind of given up a bit. I've just thought, look, it's just not going to work. And the point you made about Emery there is spot on. And again, maybe we only see it because we're following the club that we follow, but this happens all the time. Look at Mourinho with Mata when he was at Chelsea. Who was the player that when Guardiola came into Man City bombed somebody out? I can't think who it was now. But there's a good example. Some players just don't fancy some managers just don't fancy certain players, and like Drew said, you don't know what happens in training. Everything we're led to believe suggests that he wasn't quite right. He wasn't quite there, and he wasn't quite at it. And whether the whole post, the Twitter post was leveled at Emery or not, I mean, that was clever PR, whatever way you look at it, because it got people talking and it got people on his side. And it's clearly worked because the fans are, clearly 100% behind. And again, it makes me chuckle because our fans are so... Not I can't label our fans. Some of our fans are just so sheep. They're just such sheep, It's like Mesut isn't playing well and he's left out, and everyone's saying, he's done. He doesn't care. He's not interested. Get him out the side. He's useless. And then again, it's that adage: the longer someone doesn't play, the more valuable suddenly they become. And it's like it's just so strange how certain people just follow trends. If we get, like Drew said, if we get the Mesut we got last night, albeit, in a lesser competition, without as much pressure, to be fair, but again, against a decent midfield, if we get that, and that assist was fantastic. Like that's what we know he can do. The only other argument I would say is you can fit him into that team when there's only Martinelli up front. How do you fit Pepe, Ozil, Lacazette, and Aubameyang without being horribly overexposed at the other end? But that aside, what did you make of the game, Danny? I mean, it was a bit bonkers, wasn't it? Do you come out of it like I do, going, well, there was plenty of positives, and all this talk of, well, we're boring, we haven't got an identity, and we don't play good football. I mean, that was blown away. But we just also didn't defend very well. I thought Rob Holding looked really rusty. Kolasinac was poor, to be polite. I thought Hector did quite well, to be fair, but we were exposed on those flanks a few times. And then there was just some fantastic goals. Simple as that. Like, whatever way you look at it. Are you that bothered that they're out of the competition, or do you look at it more and go, well, actually, we performed pretty well. We got game time for a few more players, and we put in a good performance, and surely that's got to be the positive. Or do you think actually we're gutted we didn't go through?
Before I do that, bought this the other day.
Oh,
in English.
You're putting yourself out there, aren't you? Jesus. You're one of the cult.
My main thought about the game was how easy Ozil made all that look. He's played 2 games all season. There's virtually no ring rust around him. He ran around as he did, plods around, but he still does it magnificently. And it wasn't just that first that one where he calmly went, "You run over there, my old fruit. This ball that's almost out, I'm going to use my powers like Doctor Strange. I'm going to make the ball stay in. I'm going to put it back to you and you tap it in." Not just that one. And down the other end of the pitch, in the other half, one of the players was on the right-hand side of the edge of the box in the touchline. And then he got the ball. And then one of the players gave it back to him, and then he gave it to him, and then they gave it back to him. And then he just can't. He gave it to that first player. I think he did a sideways back heel. The back heel of his right foot, kicked it leftwards. I thought, that's pretty good. And then he moved backwards to the edge of the corner of the box. And then he just went, "Here, sunshine." Lofted ball, about an inch off the floor, if that. And then he put it in. And you think, you did all that effortlessly. God, if only I could say that word, effortlessly, again. But that just shows why I get so annoyed with Ozil, that he has all this skill. And if everybody in that team is a level 5, then you put Ozil in your team, immediately everybody in that team becomes a level 6 or level 7 with confidence, because you know that he can just play with a blindfold on and he can do it all. And that's why I get so annoyed. But like Elliot said with Harry today, Ozil isn't worth 350 grand a week. Almost no one's worth 350 grand a week. So don't worry about it. And like Drew was saying, when we renewed his contract from 180, I think it was, to 350, we got all of his image rights. And the club are making all that money back from his image rights, because he is a global superstar, be it because he played for Real Madrid or because he's a religious icon in the world of football. And that, as we've seen, can make you an absolute fortune even when you're not playing. So I think that annoys me most is that he doesn't play regularly. But I was thinking, the way you work your way up to the first team, you play for the under-18s, you play for the under-23s, then you play for the reserves, then you play for the League Cup, then maybe the Europa League, then the Premier League. Well, how's Ozil going to get back to it? Because he can't go and play for the under-23s. There's no pattern for him to get his way back. And now he's not even playing in the Europa League, he's playing in the League Cup games. And if you're playing him a League Cup game, you're only playing for an hour, then you sure as hell better start him at the weekend or give him some time at the weekend. Because if he'd have stayed on, when we're drawing the game and you need to get a goal, and you take him, I think it's 4-4 or 3-3, we're drawing the game, we need a goal. I know what, I'll take off the most creative player in one of the best in the world. He's having a really good game, not world-class game, but he's having a good 7 or 8 out of 10 game at points, maybe a 9. You take him off and you bring on a defender. You go, well, why are you doing that? We need a goal. And then later on in the game, we're now winning. Well, so what we're going to do is we need to defend this lead by taking off the defensive midfielder and putting on Ceballos, who had a mare of a game. And you're thinking, why are you doing all this lot? But the main thing for me last night is I could see I made about 30 quid in bets. I don't bet people. I only do it because I can afford to lose. They're all £1 or £2 bets. I didn't realise that cash out doesn't last for 90 minutes, does it? I had I think £1 on us to win 6-4 at 5-4, and I was about to cash out for about £11 or £12, and it disappeared. I thought, where's it gone? Shows how good I am at betting, so I lost that one. So, but I thought the lineup was interesting. That like Drew was saying, they had Naby Keita. If you watch Bundesliga in the last couple of years, he was absolute magnificent player, and it really hasn't worked for him at Liverpool. I don't know why. Drew might say that later on when he comes to him. But that midfield was packed full of really great players. You got Lalana. Still remember that time that you sent me that WhatsApp message, and you just did some bloke on radio like Lalana. That was hilarious.
Dogs could hear if they tilt their head sideways, yeah.
But I think the only reason we managed to score 5 goals is because their goalkeeper was 11 years old and 4 for 8. He made you look like a giant. So much was right with that game last night. So much was wrong. I think the reason why we all smile when we think about that game, because it doesn't matter. But then I did this tweet last night, and if I can get my mouse to wake up, and I put scroll up a little bit. Where is it? We were 2-1 up, 3-1 up, 3-2 up, 4-2 up, 4-3 up, 5-4 up. We still bloody lost. It's just the whole thing was just Holding is fit, but he's not match fit, and he was in pieces. And 2 of the goals that we conceded, one was a penalty given away by our striker. I mean, what the hell is Martinelli doing tackling in the box?
It was a horrible dive from that Chav kid.
He makes the most of it though.
You knew he was going to get it because as soon as a player goes over like that, they're always going to get that. But it was a dive, wasn't it? But then our first goal was probably offside, so.
And Mustafi's own goal. That is just a fantastic game. I'm going to go and download that. I'm going to save it. I'm going to watch it back, and I'll still watch that 10 times. Booing of the Ox. If you booed the Ox, you're an arsehole. That bloke didn't want to leave Arsenal. He played up until the day we sold him, and he's a young Englishman. Him along with Walcott and Iwobi were the 3 players that I really like the most because they're just magnificent to watch. And when they do it right, and he scored almost a replica goal that he scored for us against Monaco in one of our last Champions League games that we ever played before football died. It's just so much about the game was right and so much was wrong. So just I'm just picking out the highlights. I loved it. It was brilliant. It was just so much fun. And you just thought, hold on, we've got 5 minutes of injury time, extra time, whatever it was. And Divock Origi comes in there and does what you knew he was going to do. If you take off our defensive players, Torreira would have been all over him. And he probably would have stopped him. Try could have dropped back and played, and maybe even played further deeper, but he took him off. And Ceballos is not going to do much defending, is he? I think that was the final straw. It was me with the Emery thing. I don't believe in getting rid of the manager. I said he ain't going to leave to the end of the season, but that was just so many mistakes, one after another, and the whole thing. It just shows it's not ever going to get better. So. Yeah. Well,
that leads me on to my next question. Then, I mean, we could sit here and talk about the game forever, but again, cheap plug. Go and watch the live show with Ellis, Josh, and Carl, wasn't it?
Jess popped in at the end. Well, popped in because Ellis's Wi-Fi was knackered.
Oh, okay, yeah. So go and check that out. That's available on our YouTube page or the usual spaces. But yeah, Joe, what's your kind of overall? You touched on it earlier on. You know, we don't want to get into a clickbait pod of in or out sort of malarkey, but you're very much just judging by what you said in your tweets and just general feel. I get the impression you're very much you wouldn't mind seeing a change. Doesn't mean you're sort of hounding managers out and all that jazz, but you would like to see a change. What's we're fifth in the league. We're still in the Europa League, albeit had to do something quite dramatic to win the last game. Yes, we're out of the Carabao Cup, but who cares? We're kind of on target where we need to be. It's quite strange thing I looked at the other day. We've lost 2 games this season, and when you consider one of those is Liverpool, you can go, okay, fair enough. What is it that what's the issue you're having? Is it this big thing everybody's on about at the moment, a style of football? Is it the way that the players are being managed as a whole? Is it this thing about us potentially going backwards, or is it a bit of everything for you?
I think it's a bit of everything, which again with shades of grey. But for me, I think the biggest issue, and you can speak to more about the France side of it than I can. But for me, I think Emery just isn't suited to managing clubs that have higher expectations than a club like Sevilla had. I think that was the perfect scenario for him. He was never going to beat out Barca, Real Madrid, or Atleti, for the league title. It was always going to be Sevilla was aiming to be the best of the rest from 4th down, try to compete in Europa League. If you could squeak into Champions League, then so be it. But that was and he thrived at that up until his last season, where his bigger issues started to really come to the fore, and the relationship with Monchi kind of broke down a little bit, it seems like. It wasn't really the same. And then I think you saw that replicated at PSG. Obviously, he won trophies there. I don't say anything what I'm about to say to ever be offensive in any way, but it's way easier to keep winning trophies when you play poor football with PSG in France than you can do at another club in a league where maybe you could argue it's, at least at that period. I know the league has improved in the last couple of years, but when he was there, it was still very much, it was PSG than everybody else. So the bare minimum expectation, much like how it used to be at Bayern, was the minimum expectation was win the league. When you look at their squad comparatively to the rest of the league, that was the bare minimum requirement. So did he really he never overachieved with PSG. He did just what was required, but then you saw the little microcosm things where there was the red flags. That poor second leg performance against Barca where the wheels fell off every single bus in the parking lot. You see when they got beat out by Monaco for the league title, and I forget if it was his first or second year in charge, probably his second year, I think. If I remember right, you can correct me if I'm wrong. Things didn't go well for him at Spartak Moscow. Things didn't go well for him at Sevilla at the tail end. And I just feel like if Emery was in Marco Silva's shoes and at Everton, I think that would be a much better fit for him. Where it's just about trying to be the best possible club past the top echelon in the league. I think that suits him because I think the way he truly wants to play, I think it suits that level. I think when you're, and you can look at this across the entirety of the best leagues in Europe, when you're at clubs that have expectations and they have pedigree and they have gifted footballers who are more than just blue collar grafters. There's expectations of how you need to be playing as well. That's why managers don't last at other clubs. Even like Bayern fires managers despite winning the league because they don't fit what Bayern wants from a manager, what they want for their football and culture at the club. Ajax, same thing. Barcelona, Real Madrid, same thing. That's just kind of how it is. And I don't ever think this club was ever going to transition, come almost kind of back into a club where, I don't know, grit and determination was kind of almost at the forefront. I think every footballer should have that, but I think how Arsenal was constructed and I guess improved upon under Arsene Wenger, I think that's what the club is capable of. And I think that's the direction the club should go. And I think there's enough managers in world football now, particularly the younger generation coming up, where that's the way they think. If you look at the younger managers in Spain, a lot of the younger managers in Bundesliga, obviously everyone name drops Nagelsmann because he's always in the forefront of the headlines, but people forget how brilliant Florian Kohfeldt is. And he's very much the same as Julian Nagelsmann. And he also has the same managerial education. He has the same principles. People name drop Erik ten Hag at Ajax. It's kind of that same thing where you can't expect players of the ability that our squad actually has to play football the way, say, like Wolves play. Wolves doesn't have bad players, but they have players that fit a particular mold. Our players just don't fit, for me, what Unai Emery, I think what he wants to do at the core of what his footballing philosophies are. I think he tries to talk a big game, but I think when you look at the product on the pitch, wherever he's gone, I don't think the words that he speaks and what he tries to do tangibly match. I think the tangible evidence is what you should be looking at. I don't think that evidence fits us. I think we just need someone who, again, I'm not saying firing Arsene Wenger was poor. I think he had to go, but a manager who is more similar to Wenger, I think, is required. I don't think Emery is even remotely close to that. And I just think Emery could be a fine manager, but just like players that work at clubs, managers just sometimes don't work at clubs. And I just think it's just the wrong fit. I think that's kind of where it begins and ends. I'm not saying he shouldn't ever have another job or never try to go to another good club. I just don't think what we need when you look at our squad and look at the way we need to handle the youth sector, how to compete in the Premier League. You cannot go and be truly competitive in the Premier League trying to operate like a club who just wants to be the best of the rest. That's what you're going to get, and that's what we've gotten. And you see it when he's so timid away from home, where you go to places like, I don't know, Newcastle, and it's almost like you're afraid to play your football. Like, that is the mentality that should never be in existence at Arsenal or any big club. People wouldn't stand for it. And when you look at all the bigger clubs around Europe, they wouldn't be happy with it. So why should we be happy with it? So that's kind of, I don't think he should be fired tomorrow. I think looking at Josh Kroenke and how he's handled and how Stan has handled a lot of their American franchises, they don't want instability mid-season. I don't think Raul wants it either. I doubt it. So if he is going to go, I think they'll give him the rest of the year, and I think they'll do their due diligence for the rest of our season to try to find the correct replacement. I don't think he's about to be sacked during Christmas. I don't think we're going to put ourselves through that. And I don't necessarily want him to go tomorrow, but I do think we shouldn't go into year 3 with Unai. I think we do need to move on, but I think he also kind of almost deserves the rest of the season to maybe try to right the ship and see if he can actually prove himself. And it's sort of what we do and how and what he does gives us the answer. If we've not gotten any better come May, then why should we keep him? If we have, then maybe you say we give him another season. But from where I stand currently, I think he does. I do think we have to move on after the season.
Yeah, I think you make some really good points there, and I'll throw my 5 pence in because I know I sort of teased it slightly earlier on, but I just wanted to sort of put my 10p's worth into the conversation, because I think a lot of people have got very, very short memories. It was around about this time last year where our supporters and our fan base were chanting, "We've got our Arsenal back." I don't know if anyone remembers that, but they were, and it was a fact, and people were doing that. And I think people have got very short memories in terms of the fact that this manager has come in and replaced, probably the greatest manager in the history of this club. Whether you like him or you don't, it's just a fact. And things do take time. I do completely understand the people that say there is a disconnect in what he says and what he's producing. I do agree with that. And I think that was a bit of an issue in his time at PSG as well, in that what he wanted from that side was not necessarily what was actually being put out on the pitch or what he was saying he wanted. I do think his communication skills are not the best, and it's not just a language barrier. I think he almost overthinks things. I think the 5 captains thing is a prime example of that. You want your manager to just be decisive, and you know what? If they're decisive and they say, "I'm going to do this," and they live by that, and it goes wrong, then fine. You say, "Do you know what? Okay, you stuck by your principles. You said what you were doing, and that's it." I do get the feeling that at the moment he's almost trying to please too many people, and he's trying to do things to suit too many players and too many systems, rather than just sticking by really what he came to do. The pressing game seems to have disappeared. Don't know whether that's a system change, that he's meant. The formation has sort of gone back to where it was when he first came. I do have issues with people who say we haven't progressed, because I do think we have. But maybe we've regressed in other areas. And I think that the progression side is overlooked by the fact that we've probably regressed in the style of football we're producing. Now, I've said for a while, and I know Jason and John in particular don't necessarily agree with this one, but I genuinely don't think people would moan if we won 1-0 or 2-0 pretty much every week, or drew a few games and won a few more than we lost. I just don't think people would mention this footballing identity, this fabled thing that everyone bangs on about. And I thought you made a really good point there, Drew, about the size of the club. And that I do agree with. I do think that there is potentially an element that maybe this is just slightly too big a job for what Unai wants to do. And that's where I do agree with people who say maybe the change could potentially be the right thing to do. But again, people with short memories, this is why he was given a 2-year contract with the option of a third. This is exactly the reason why the board gave him that. Now, there's been a lot of talk about him saying, some of the board wanted him to get a new contract last year. Well, at the time, you could see why. We did get to Europa League final. We spectacularly shat the bed. But before that, we had that Champions League in our grasp, and we shat the bed. So, 2 massive failings, 100%. And I think the coach would take that on board himself. But at that time, you can see why they would have offered him a new deal, because we were right in there. And who knows where we'll end up this season. And that's why I think this talk of people saying, "Oh, just give it Freddie Lumbo to the end of the season." I adore Freddie. I'd take him in my mouth now. I'd cry a little bit, but I would. He's I love him to bits. He's one of my favourite players of all time. I think he's a brilliant personality. I think I think long term he could well be the sort of what Barca did with Pep type of situation. You could see that happening. He's obviously a very clever, intelligent, articulate coach. But the idea that you just get rid of a coach because you don't like his style, a coach that's currently sat 5th in the league and well within the top 4 race and still in the European competition, to me, I think it's madness. And you see the same names bring up the same points over and over again. Oh, let's just get Allegri. Okay, yeah, let's get Allegri and let's be even more boring than you apparently think we are already.
And Allegri, what's he going to do with all the striking players we've got when he wants defensive, defensive tactical players?
And what makes people think that Max Allegri go, oh yeah, absolutely.
I want that. I love a bit of Europa League.
Exactly. And
I love your fans.
and then of course we've got the latest craze, which is to bring in Jose Mourinho, which is utterly. In fairness, only the people that literally are on psych wards, I'm joking, of course, I shouldn't knock that, but literally people in straitjackets are the only people that are saying, no, that'd be a really good idea.
It's not as bad as the ones that say, maybe we should get Brendan Rodgers. Yeah, like he's going to walk out of Leicester when they've got a magnificent team spirit, bought magnificent players in the summer, and they're playing brilliant football.
And he's doing a great job at Leicester, there's no doubt. But again, Drew's point rings completely true. He's doing a great job at a club of Leicester's level. And people say, yeah, but Leicester are above us in the league. They won 9-0, blah, 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 exciting football, blah, blah, blah. Yeah, because there's no pressure. They've won the league. He's come in and Leicester have had they had Claude Puel and they were all the lowest ebb. If Leicester lose 6 games on the trot, Leicester's fans are not going to turn around and go, well, that Brendan Rodgers, he's fucking shit. They're just going to go, oh, okay, well, we'll get back. We'll be all right.
It's all happened to Managerial. They soon got him out when things were going wrong.
Exactly. And it's the modern culture. Marcus Silva was a great example that Drew mentioned there. Some managers are good fits, some aren't. And you have to give things a life cycle. I think we would have been incredibly lucky to have appointed the perfect coach straight after Arsene. There's no way we would have got it right.
Man City doesn't happen either, does it?
No, Man City went through Mark Hughes, for Christ's sake. Mark Hughes and Manuel Pellegrini.
Everyone always forgets that Mark Hughes managed Man City. I feel like it completely just boggles the mind. I think it just
exactly. And the same people that are saying that, the same people saying, "Oh, we should have gone for Pep." Pep's worked his way into that job and has done brilliantly. But it was a process to get them to that coach. And who'd have known? For all my not issues, he doesn't give a shit what I think. But for all my doubts of the style of football Pep plays, and that is not my cup of tea. But he's successful and he's a winner. But he's come through that Barcelona system and he has succeeded. He wasn't universally popular at Bayern, by the way, was he, Drew? So
not even. Well, yes and no, but that's a whole other debate. My just to jump in, my issue. And I have my issue with a lot of our fan base, not just in terms of this discussion, but in terms of players we apparently should be signing or not signing. Our fans they'll scour the internet and they'll look at teams that are playing attractive football and being successful and then automatically assume those managers fit Arsenal. The newest craze, and John will love this, is Marco Rose. I'm like, that's great. Marco Rose in his first year is doing bits at Gladbach. Congratulations. However, you're not factoring in maybe Gladbach they have a team that fits what he needs to do. Maybe he has freedom to actually play a brand of football that suits him. You don't know how it works. It doesn't mean if you uproot him from Gladbach and plug him into Arsenal, instantaneously we're fixed. That's not how managing football works at all. And I think you can look at there's so many examples where also things, for all we know, they could go winless in the next 10 matches starting next week. We don't know that yet. So
look at Hoodle.
Another prime example of a man who I would have not been sad at if he took over at Arsenal. But
exactly.
Just because it's not working for him at Saints doesn't mean his next port of call won't work for him. It's very hard, and I think people should really start to give more thought to this. It's very hard for managers to be successful year in, year out, long term, especially at multiple clubs, which really should make people understand that the jobs that both Arsene Wenger and Sir Alex Ferguson did for decades, keeping clubs competitive, no matter what changes occurred, they don't get nearly enough credit for that. And I don't think many managers currently are cut out to actually be able to. Pep said it himself, and I think, Kris, to a certain degree, I know you don't like it, but you could probably agree with that, and you just brought it up, that managers have life cycles because eventually things will go stale. Managers have to be able to evolve, and if you don't, you'll lose your players, and then that's when things start to dip. Managers that are not open to the way football works is that things are constantly evolving and progressing. If you don't do that, you're going to fall by the wayside. So a manager will look good now, but in 3 years, he might not look so good, whether if he's at the same club or a different one. And you got to have, there's always that little mini refresh button where you have to tweak just a little bit enough, tweak your squad a little bit, tweak your tactics just a little bit, tweak your approach just a little bit, because if you don't, things will catch up with you and then you hit a wall. So I don't know. I mean, I take your points that I don't think Unai's doing as bad a job as people set him out to say that he's doing, but I also don't think he is doing enough. I think it's a bit of both. So that's why I don't think he should just be let go tomorrow. And not for nothing, I think everyone in this fan base loves Freddie, but to suggest that Freddie's going to come in and we're going to go 25 unbeaten just because Freddie used to be an invincible and he loves the club and the youth love him, that's all great. But there's zero guarantees in that.
It's Solskjaer, isn't it? That's the risk you run, isn't it?
Exactly. And you could say that there's been a lot of successful stories where managers have turned into successful managers after being on someone's staff as an assistant or an assistant's assistant. That's all well and true. But those are also very few and far between. A lot of the times, assistant coaches are just destined to be lifelong assistant coaches. Jumping from an assistant coach to a manager are two very different things. People don't also.
Freddie was an ambassador, wasn't he? Before he was even a coach, he was
right. And not for nothing, he wasn't particularly great at Wolfsburg. So as an assistant, so again, it's just. But that could also be maybe we just fit better than they did. It's just there's so many factors that fans don't. That factor. And I'm still fighting the good fight to say why does David McConnell want to leave RB Leipzig for us. I'm still having this discussion on a daily basis. So I'm quite sure we'll be having this managerial talk for the rest of the season. So, we'll see. But I don't know. Again, gray area that no one really pays attention to. And I think more people just kind of need to have a discussion about.
So. The biggest issue I have, and Danny, I'll bring you in to wrap this up before we go into questions. But the biggest issue I have is, again, it comes back to this argument that you get shouted down on Twitter all the time when you do this. When you say something or you try and put a positive spin on, and I play the game on Twitter. I like to go fishing every once in a while, but it is the same people that say the same things, and people take some of this too personally. Like Unai is deliberately trying to sabotage their wonderful club, and they talk. There are still Arsenal fans out there now that still think that we are the Invincibles of 98, of 2002, the double winners of 2002. Newsflash, everybody, we're not. We are a Europa League club trying to get back in the Champions League. That's what we are. We are on par with other clubs in that bracket. We're not anywhere near the Liverpools and the Man Cities. And, say again?
Parts of our team are on par with
players-wise. Yeah, players-wise.
If used properly, we should be, at the moment, I'd say, probably third in the league.
Yeah, but this is my argument. We're sat here on Halloween, everybody. It's the 31st of October. And I said this to Jace the other night, and, Jace doesn't necessarily agree, and that's fine. But we could win the next 5 or 6 out of 7, and people would still say, oh, yeah, but there's always but because their agenda is concrete and their agenda is I want him out. That's it. It's my club. We're the Arsenal. We're great. We're fantastic. Yeah, we are. We're a magnificent club, but we're also full of shithouses as well. We've also got a lot of faults, and we've got a lot of very entitled, very spoilt fans who don't understand that before Arsene Wenger. In 14-15, was it 14? 94-95. Danny, you'll remember this. I think we finished 15th. In the days we struggled to beat QPR at home. We were a fucking mess under Willock, and for people to sit there now and call Unai the Spanish Willock, I find really disrespectful and very, very sick, very one-minded, very, very sort of agenda-based. They've made their mind up. That's it. He's shit. He's this. And there's people now. You only have to look through Twitter. There's people now that are saying, "Oh well, he doesn't do this in training. He doesn't do that." How the fuck do you know? Like, how do you know this stuff? And if we finish in those Champions League spots at the end of the season, or if we win the Europa League, people, don't get me wrong. People have made up their minds. A lot of people have made up their minds. I get that, but people will still. They will still have this inbred thing in themselves where they will refuse to give him any credit and say, well, yeah, but it's a team that won it. Aubameyang saved his job. Bullshit. Players have to work in a system. Players have to work with the manager. And these people saying, oh, he's lost the dressing room. Nobody knows that. They just don't know that. And I'm not saying that he's the right man for the history of the club, and he's going to be there forevermore. I'm not saying that. And there are clear faults, 100%. There's certain things he's done that I've sat there and gone, you're not helping yourself there, mate. You're really not helping yourself there. But if we go 5 or 6 games unbeaten, or if we put in a few quality performances, people will soon forget. However, I still think they'll sit with their "we want him out" bracket, placards, because that's the modern era. But
quick question. So just real fast before we move to the questions, I wanted to ask both of you something. So if we lose to Wolves and Leicester, will your opinion slightly change? How will you personally handle that debate? Because the debate will only increase. And certainly, I think most people don't expect us to beat Leicester. I think we can beat Wolves, but you never know if we will or we won't. So if we go out and field sort of the same sort of tactics on the day and the same approach, and if we're not just getting the performances and the results, will that change your mind? Or do you still think it's going to take you longer to really say, okay, well, maybe he's not working out? And obviously there's no timeline on this, because I've more or less made my mind up. That doesn't mean it can't change. My mind could change. We could go 15 unbeaten and my mind might change, right? I think the issue is a lot of fans, once they make their mind up, that's it. And as you just said it, there's no compromise at that point. My mind's made up, that's it. I'm stubborn, forget it, he's done, no matter what happens.
Yep. And I'm not willing to give him credit either.
Right. But it also works in the reverse. Some people are so staunchly pro, you have to support the manager, that they won't actually look critically and actually see the problems that exist. So my question is, will your mind change from these next 2 league matches if they don't go well? Or are you going to be of the same opinion?
I personally, briefly, I would be concerned, definitely. I'm not, I'm not blind, and yeah, I do wind some people up, but
no, surely not.
I know, but I'm, I'm fully aware that sometimes we do look a bit stodgy. I'm fully aware that for me that midfield should be Guendouzi and Torreira. It should be, end of story. For me, there is no. The debate is over. The Xhaka thing doesn't work unless you play Xhaka in the right place, in the right system to suit his game, which we're not doing. We should be finding a way to work 2 centre forwards into the team, because we've got 2 of the best centre forwards in Europe. And if we're playing one of them wide, we're losing something. There has to be a better way of setting up. I would like to see us with the 2 fullbacks in place. But all that aside, to answer your question, if we don't, a lot of it depends, because if we put in really good performances and we get screwed over like we did last weekend, because people forget that, I jokingly said to John, well, I don't count that as a loss because we won that game. We did. But, that doesn't disguise the fact we were 2-0 up and threw away a 2-goal lead, So there are, but if something like that happens, that's the only caveat. But no, if we lose to Wolves and we lose to Leicester, then yeah, questions have to be asked. Luckily, I'm not the one who has to ask those questions. I'm just a fan. But no, my opinion is always open to change. And I'm not, don't get me wrong, I'm not sitting here tonight or any night and saying, Unai is exactly what I want. Everything he does is great. He's fantastic. Give him a new 5-year deal. I do think that questions need to be asked, like in any job. If you go into a job and you are not performing, you're set out with a clear guideline, which clearly he's been given the rhetoric. We need to be in the Champions League within 2 years. And I think where the hierarchy went wrong was they bought into the fact we were going to make it last year. They got so wrapped up in all the money we were going to get and all the sponsorship, and it was always like, well, we're in, and then we spectacularly shat the bed in 2 separate competitions. They're now frantically after having to backpedal and go, oh, actually. So if we make it, then brilliant. But if those 2 games go against us and we start slipping down the table, then yeah, 100%. My opinion will. I'm not going to sit here and start tweeting Emery out.
Well, of course not.
but I would definitely be saying, the lineups are key, and I would like to see, and this is a little bit contradictory to what I've said in recent times, but based upon what we saw Mesut provide or performing last night, I'd like to see Emery go, do you know what? Actually, my issues with the player aside, he came in last night, he took his opportunity, played well. I'll put him in that midfield on Saturday, and if he performs, he'll stay in that midfield. That's what I'd like to see. And if we get the result, then great. But yeah, if we lose those games, and the performances are what they were against Sheffield United and to a slightly lesser extent Crystal Palace, then yeah, we've got to ask questions, and that's fine. Asking questions and debating it rationally and putting forward points. Yeah, I'm all for that. It's the other that bugs me. But what do you think, Danny?
I was trying to think of a decent analogy about this. If Sian was making me a coffee and she kept using water from the cat bowl, sooner or later I'm going to go, use the right stuff. You don't use the wrong. Well, you've put water from the cat food bowl and you put a handful of mud. Well, the mud looks like coffee. No, Sian, stop it. You do it properly with the tools you've got, or you stop it. He needs to stop it. I don't care about the results as much as I care about going, hold on, why is Torreira our furthest forward player, like he was at times last night? Why is Xhaka? Why are you making Xhaka your captain and bringing him off, substituting him off 3 times out of the last 5 Premier League games? These things you shouldn't be doing. So I'm not so much results based. If you're not going to do it properly, then don't do it at all. How do you feel, Drew?
I don't know how I feel about your analogy, but
been a fellow copy person.
But your overall points, man, I think I would agree overall. I feel like it's like the meat and bits of the overall issues. You're looking at the gray area. You're not looking at the definitive overall scenarios. You're looking at under the surface, under the hood. You're looking at how the engine's actually working relative to what the performance of the car actually is. Both have to be tweaked to perfection to get the optimal performance out, and we're clearly not getting our optimal performances out on the pitch, certainly consistently. So, I mean, I do agree with what you're saying, but I think that's been a criticism for a while now, and I think that's the other issue. Is I feel like the same issues that we were discussing last season that we're still discussing. For me, that's probably my biggest concern. Is that there are clearly things that just don't work, yet we're trying to force them to work. People had the same criticism about Arsene Wenger in the final years of his term, that he kept doing things that just weren't working, and that should have cost him his job. Whether I agree with that or not is another story. It's another debate. But I think in terms of what you said, it's just, again, when you persist at using a number 6 as trying to turn Torreira into Ramsey, that sort of defies belief, considering what Torreira has done as a 6 at Sampdoria, and Kris will know about that, and how he played for Uruguay as a 6. Yeah, it's almost like the things that we're asking questions about are the things that have the easiest answers to. But there are also issues that persist that we've not even explored, as Kris just said. For me, when you have players of a certain quality, they have to start. You have to start Aubameyang, and you have to start Lacazette. You can't have one of them not play. The best way to get the best performance of your team is to play your best players and find a way to make it work. We clearly haven't found a way to make it work for all parties involved, because Aubameyang can still get goals as a winger, but is he really? He's not the same player. He doesn't have the same effect on the pitch. He doesn't have the same threat involved. Lacazette on the flank is the same thing. I know he played flank at Lyon, and Kris can speak to that also, but he's still not the same Lacazette when he's playing as a traditional number 9. Mesut Ozil on the wing, played on the wing at Real Madrid, played on the wing for Germany, played on the wing at times for Werder Bremen, but it doesn't mean that wasn't his best role. There's a reason why players have their best roles, and if you can't look at your team and confidently week in, week out say these pieces fit in these slots to perfection, and we're going with this week in, week out consistently without a ton of change, you can't expect your team to play consistently and perform well. So Emery is almost the one giving himself more questions to answer without answering the other ones first. And I think that's kind of where the issues are really persisting right now for us. So I would probably agree with both of you. I think Kris said it perfectly. If we play well and lose, you can't be mad when you play well and you just lose. Like, sometimes the cards won't fall in your favor, and it's kind of how it begins and ends. But if we put up an absolute stinker against Leicester, lose 4-0, like tepid against Wolves and lose 1-0 and create nothing, then you kind of have to ask questions. But signs of progression can still exist when you're not getting results. If you're playing well but not getting results, that's still a positive. If you're not getting results and you're playing absolutely horrifically, then that's another answer on the other side of the spectrum. So I do think moving into December, we need to kind of have more direction. If we don't have direction come the Christmas period, I think that's almost kind of, for me, that's almost to the point where I'm going to start to be stubborn and say my mind can't change now, because Emery's mind won't change on his end. So I don't really know how to handle it, but we'll see how it goes.
It's key time as well, isn't it?
Yeah. I brought something up that I spent half hour trying to figure out last night. If you only see this if you're on YouTube. Like Kris was saying, for me, the first 2 names on the team sheet has got to be Aubameyang and Lacazette. Now, that means playing them both up front in their best positions. So that formation I've put there, would that work? If I'd have another arrow for Pepe and Ozil for coming into the centre of midfield. That's not going to work, is it?
Not for me. I think for me, if we play 2 up front, you have to either play a 4-3-1-2 or you have to go with 3 at the back and ask Tierney and Bellerin to be the width. But then what do you do with Nicolas Pepe? That's the other issue. If you go with that formation, we just spent that much money on a player who no longer fits what we want to do.
Yeah.
So
that's the problem I was having.
4-2-2 is the only other way I could see it working, which is similar to what you've got on screen, Danny. But Guendouzi would have to play deeper, and you'd have to say to those two, "You are 2 holding midfielders. That is all you do. You win the ball and you give it to the 2 in front of you. That's it."
Ironically, it'd have to be what RB Leipzig played in their first year in the Bundesliga, where Naby Keita played centrally, and then had Emil Forsberg played on the left. You had Sabitzer on the right, and then you had Timo Werner and Poulsen up front, and it worked brilliantly. But again, clearly defined roles. The center midfielders were defensive-minded players first only. They were only defensive shields. That's it. And it was more counterattack based than possession based, which is not how Emery seems. He doesn't want to play that way. He seems when he wants to dominate possession, so that requires sacrifice on his end. I do agree with Kris. That could work though. 4-2-2 could work, but I just don't think.
I think it would scare teams as well. I think that's the one thing that baffles me with managers in the modern era is that there's too many that are wedded to certain styles and systems. And I hold my hands up. I've been doing it even at my level of coaching. It's like I love 4-2-3-1. That's what I stick with. But what I have learned in recent weeks and this season is you can still play 4-2-3-1, but you can have variations of it. And you can say to the players, this is how we're sort of lined up on Sky, if you will. But you've got the freedom, the creative license to become other things. You can adapt and mould. And I genuinely think if you had 2 up front, it would actually befuddle teams. We can't defend. We just can't. So why not?
All the help they can get.
Away. Yeah, I mean,
but when you look at it, can Man City really defend?
No.
The way Man City defends is by pressing. That's their defense. If you break that press, Man City usually is completely open to the counterattack. But they possess the ball well, and they press and try to regain possession as quickly as possible. Because if you break that press, you're going to score because their defense really is lackluster considering size and scope of the club. What they've done recently, they don't defend well. That's why pressing exists. If you don't defend well, get the ball back high up, so you don't have to worry about trying to sit back deeper and work it out. So
they played 2 central midfielders at centre back, didn't they?
I was going to say, although this isn't the football hipsters pod, which is you go and Google, you get some fine quality pods there. You look at Man City at the moment; they brought in Rodri to replace Fernandinho, and now they're playing Rodri and Fernandinho at centre back. And John Stones, very decent player, and Laporte can't get a game.
Well, Laporte's injured.
Laporte's injured.
Yeah.
I thought he was back from injury in the last couple of games.
No,
he was out injured.
He's out for a while still. I think.
Maybe Otamendi's the other centre back.
Otamendi's there, yeah.
And so I was listening to the Transfer Market pod, which is a really, really good podcast, and it's sort their audio out. And I'm talking to Duncan about that at the moment. If he listens, he actually DM'd me and said, "What can we do?" And so if you imagine if Emery's doing that, imagine if Emery is playing Xhaka and Torreira as our centre backs.
Don't give him ideas.
Right, we could do this for hours. Kris, I've DM'd you the listeners' questions.
I've got them. We're gonna do something.
Read them.
That's fine. We're going to do something we never do. We're going to keep it short and sweet on questions. We're going to go punchy through these. So
you're asking them, so there won't be 5-hour answers.
No, exactly. There's only a couple that I'm going to chirp in on.
There's some after you.
Yeah. First one is from let's go with firstly Hoppy says, what should I have for tea?
Have what I had, a tin of mushroom soup and a tin of tuna all mixed up and microwaved. It's lovely.
And they said, what should he have for tea? Not what should he...
Well, I only eat once a day, so that's what I had.
I say treat yourself. Treat yourself, Hoppy. Takeaway. Some sort of takeaway, that's what I say. So, yeah, that's that one. Drew, BJ Dunham says, do you want to see Xhaka in an Arsenal kit again? I think I know the answer, but...
I mean... He's an Arsenal player, so yeah, I want him to play. I want him to perform. I'm trying to back the player, and I don't take issue with the way he acted necessarily. I think he could have handled it better, but I don't think he should be ostracized from the entire club's footballing community over it. So no, if he works his way back into the team, I want to see him. I want to see him perform. If he doesn't perform well, then he shouldn't play. But I don't want him essentially removed from the team until he's sold. I think that's ridiculous and blatant overreaction to the issue. So
Yeah, well said. I agree with that. Danny Fraz, aka the Don Cat Superhero. That's an interesting name. Who had the stronger starting 11 last night? It's an interesting question, that.
I think you break it up into the 4 sections: goalkeeper, us, defence, probably us, midfield, definitely them, and I don't think they had any forwards, did they? I mean, they had some promising numbers. Brewster was pretty good, so I'd probably say forwards them.
Yeah, I think Origi, you'd say on experience alone, is ahead of Martinelli, although I love Martinelli to bits. But
although Ozil should heavily be on our side, but not when you've got people like Keita playing in there, who's a £40 million player, recent £40 million player. And, Lallana. I can't stand his beard.
Because I know we are pressed for time, without going too much into depth, though, I don't think there's many more games that Martinelli will have to play before he gets a chance in the first team. I really, really like it.
He did at the first game of the season, didn't he? And he looked all right. Plus, his ability to play anywhere across the front line, and he scored 7 games in 410 minutes, I think it is.
And he's got that South American bastard about him, hasn't he? He's got that bit of drive. Not only that, though, he loses the ball and he's like an excitable puppy. He's like, I'm going to go and get it back. He's got that grit, that bit of desire. I really, really like him. I do think, as our good friend GA tweeted the other night, I think we found one there. So hopefully that continues. One arm bastard, who I know is a big fan of mine. Are Lacazette and Torreira seemingly immune to criticism from many supporters? I feel Rob and Hector aren't looking at full speed yet. Did you expect either in the starting lineup for Leicester 2 months ago, and do you now? So the second part of that, probably by Leicester, I would expect both of them to be in. So that answers that one. Are Lacazette and Torreira immune to criticism?
Well, they've got to do something wrong, haven't they?
Yeah,
they've done nothing wrong.
If you fancy a laugh, listen to the Footballistically Arsenal podcast this week and listen to the crap that Alan Algar spouts.
I like Alan. You leave him alone.
Well, I'm sure he's a lovely bloke, but he talks utter shite. If you fancy a laugh, just give that a listen. I'll say no more. I'll let you decide with your own ears. But what do you think, Joe? Do you think that people saying Lacazette is hasn't come back the same player? I feel like he needs to get up to speed, and Torreira strikes me as a player who just desperately needs to play. I don't know about criticism. What do you think?
I think I think you just said it. It's hard to find form when you're not having chances to find it, and it's not just Torreira just needs to play, and particularly he has to play where he's best at. He's not going to find form playing as an 8 when he's not an 8. Play him as a 6. Let him find his form. There was a reason why, like Danny brought up earlier in the pod, he won 5 men of the match awards out of 6 when he was playing in his correct position first half of the season last year. Lacazette just needs consistent minutes. I feel like everybody knows how good he is, but again, being able to slot into a place in the 11 consistently and just playing in that one area and just being able to find your feet, it makes a big difference. If he's constantly in and out of the team or constantly in and out of different roles, it's hard to find consistency. So I don't think they're immune from criticism. I just think it's not time to be critical yet. I think if he was to start 5 matches and play poorly in 4 of them, then you can be critical. But we have to get to that point first before we can be critical. So.
Yeah. Emery says he plays in there so he can break up, play further up the field, which I think is a nonsense idea.
That is nonsense, but whatever.
I can see what he's trying to do. I just don't think it will work. I think sometimes you don't
else, which isn't worth it.
Yeah, if you buy a tricycle, you don't ride it on two wheels. Do you know what I mean?
I do the analogies here.
Eh?
I do the shit analogies, not you.
Well, yeah, but well, fair enough, yeah. But
maybe bring the coffee up again. I will.
By the way, if this podcast isn't called Unai Emery's or Unai makes coffee with cat food, then I'm quitting. Just because it will make people go, why is it called that? And you can draw pictures. No, I would play, as I said earlier, I play Torreira in his rightful position. But I get why he's trying. He obviously saw something that Ramsey did in that position, and he obviously, he wants to do it. And the only thing I can think is in training it works. That's the only thing I can think, because there's no way any manager is that arrogant where they just go, well, I'm going to do it regardless, and that's it. Something obviously works. It just maybe doesn't work against certain opposition, or he's being out tacticked. I don't know, but still, good question. What else we got? Matt Roberts says, are we seeing after seeing gestures of Bellerin last night, does he deserve to be Arsenal captain? I do think people are getting a little carried away. It was really lovely to see him put the jacket around the lad. I thought that was very cute, and I do think
Santi he put it around. Was that a little kid?
No, that wasn't indeed.
Sorry.
Bless him.
Well, Santi's back.
Who's having a wonderful season, by the way, and good to see. But no, I think he will potentially be a possible future captain. But at the moment, I think that's probably a hassle he doesn't need. He just wants to get back to playing football. But no, he's I think deserving of being captain is probably a bit strong. But one of the front runners in the long run, yeah, why not? And a little shout to Kieran Tierney as well, who was very vocal in telling the players to go and applaud the fans last night after the game, which is good to see.
He's fantastic. I just love he's so angry, but
I love
so
the fact he tucks his shirt in. I think that's great. I love the fact he tucks his shirt in.
If you cut him in half, he'll have 1984 written through him or something like that.
Yeah, he would.
Brilliant. Yeah. We've got him for the next decade.
Don't jinx it. You know now he's going to fall over the weights in the weight room tomorrow and be out for 7 years. But yeah. Pete Kennelly says to the Pirates, fire cannons at other ships if they ask for a trick during treat. Genuinely curious. I'd take whatever I can get at the moment, Pete. Trust me. But I'd fire whatever. I'd trip up whoever. I'd do whatever. I'm a bit salty after last weekend's result, but anyway.
Salty pirate, I think worse.
Yeah. Drew, you can have this one because Nicky, it's not Nicky Wilson. I think this is a different Nick Wilson. He says, Chris, you're a football manager. Debatable. Why don't Arsenal know how to take throw-ins?
Oh, it is Nicky. He's changed it to Nick.
Oh, it is Nicky. Okay,
Nicky,
cool.
Yeah.
He's being more mature. Yes. He says, why don't Arsenal know how to take throw-ins? We're even told off for time wasting in the loss to Sheffield United last week. Surely throw-ins are not difficult to teach. How do you teach throw-ins, Drew? Because I see it even at my level where people just cannot take a throw-in, and I don't understand why.
Do you know why? It's because people aren't at younger ages. They stop teaching players how to take throw-ins. And it's something that when you're coaching players of a certain age, you expect players to just know.
Yep.
I see it in my institution as well, where I'll have 17-year-olds. I'm just like, what are you doing? Like, that is not. But it's because whoever coached them before me when they were like 12 didn't tell them at all, or they did it so poorly and it's just stuck with it, and no one's corrected that behavior, and that's just kind of how it begins and ends. It's such a mundane, small, minute detail that so many coaches just bypass it because they're worried about the tactical side of things. They forget to actually teach players how to throw a ball correctly. So.
That's so true. And when you say to a player, a throw-in should always go line, and they look at you blankly, you know you've got a problem. And they can't understand the idea. I've also experienced
that as well. So yeah, no, I understand.
Yeah, it's like throwing it straight into the middle of the pitch is not a good idea.
Correct.
Mental. Danny, Swedish Gooner. Actually, no, I'll take that one because that's about me. Could the Pirates beat Arsenal under Emery? Naturally, we can beat anyone, Swedish Gooner. But no, probably not. Sophie's question, will Mike wait for Arsenal to win the league as long as his beloved Washington Nationals? That one's gone over my head. Is that one that you know?
Ice hockey.
Ah, right, okay.
No, the Washington Nationals are an American baseball team. They just won the World Series last night. That's
Did they?
Yeah.
That's
They haven't won it in a while.
Yeah, they haven't ever. That's the first time they ever won the World Series.
Oh, okay. Well, that makes more sense now.
Houston Astros.
Houston Astros, they're the name from the past. Love it.
At least Chris knows what that means. Danny has no clue.
Danny's got straight over his head.
That's baseball. It's cricket with a funny shaped bat.
While we're on US sports, how delighted I am that Chicago Fire are going back to Soldier Field as well. That's awesome.
Oh, are they really?
Yes, indeed. Yeah, as of next season.
Nice.
They are playing their home games back home, which is quite cool.
That's cool.
Now they just have to learn how to play football again, which is good. Josh Robinson, I suppose I can take a bit of this.
You should have seen how he tweeted this. Every single one had a massive line in between it. It's like he was shouting it at the top of his voice.
Well, he says, Josh Robinson 87 says, Guendouzi does my nutting, stresses me out when he's on the ball, gives it away, passing is average, puts teammates in danger, neither creative or defensive, no progression in the middle, midfield three of Torreira, Xhaka, Ozil. Please, do you agree? I'm just going to... Josh, I know where you live, and I'm coming for you. No, I don't know where you live, Josh, at all. Thank you for the question, Josh. You might guess I strongly disagree with a lot of that by my answering, but I will put it to Drew as well. Just my thoughts on it is that I do disagree. The thing you have to remember with Guendouzi is he's not the finished article. There's still plenty of work that needs to be done. But this is a lad
who's finished puberty, for fuck's sake.
Exactly. He's come from Ligue 2, which I will completely admit is not the greatest standard of football. Having watched plenty of it this season, and for
too good for Khan.
Yeah, not for Lorient. Hey, but it's not the greatest standard. Even making the step up from Ligue 1 has been hard on a lot of players. So to step up from Ligue 2 is incredibly hard. Not to mention the fact he's stepping up from Ligue 2 to Arsenal. This is not a player we've picked up from Watford reserves. This is a guy who has literally come from being a nobody, unless you follow that level, to now essentially one of the first names on our team sheet. I think the pluses massively outweigh the negatives with Guendouzi, and he'd be in my lineup every week. I think he shows maturity beyond his age. He's got leadership qualities, and no, I'm not saying he should be a captain. I'm just saying he's got leadership qualities, and I'll draw a line under it by saying I can't wait for him to run Barcelona's midfield in 3 years' time, because you all know that's what's going to happen. Drew, do you think Josh has got any points? Is there anything that you would add to that?
No, I wouldn't say so. I think I'd agree that. I mean, issues notwithstanding, most young players aren't going to be the finished article at the age he's at. So some of it is in terms of you just get better over time. Some of it is focused training that you can do on the training ground and in matches, and they get better at it. But I think, as you said, the pros outweigh the cons. And I think he's earned the time he gets. I think he needs to be for first choice 11 player at this point. And I think he should remain there until something drastic happens, like a massive injury, if it ever happens, God forbid, or we buy someone who just ends up being better, or he gets sold. But I think this is kind of something what the fans wanted, though. Every fan keeps saying we want to see younger players make it at the club and get time. You're seeing it right now.
Don't bring logic into it, Drew, for fuck's sake.
This is what I do best, Danny.
How dare you presume that if we play him lots now, then when he's older, it'll be even better for us? No, you don't play until you're good enough.
Don't play until you're 26 years old and on the cusp of your prime.
And not to mention a certain manager who had the faith to put him in the side as well, which is gone completely forgotten by everyone. Just to throw
61 games he's already played for us. How many players? He's played the 12th highest number of games at the club already.
Don't forget, people want to see Saka at left wing week in, week out, when he's only really performed in one match this season, but they're still happy to see him start. So Guendouzi actually he's earned it. He earned it, in points last season. He's earned it, I think, with most performances this season. He's going to make mistakes. He's still not even 21 years old yet. You kind of just have to live and grow with it. That's also, again, I guess it's kind of part of a cultural thing. This is a standard operation procedure in France and Germany and the Netherlands, Belgium, and Spain and Portugal. Young players, if they're good enough, they play. When they make mistakes, you understand that they're 19 or they're 20 or they're 18 and they're going to make mistakes. For all the people who keep saying that Kai Havertz is the second coming of Christ, he still has moments where he makes wrong decisions and he doesn't get skinned alive for it. So it's just kind of, you have to roll with the punches. Younger players will make errors. When they make errors, you move on. But
you learn.
He's been one of the more consistent performers in our entire midfield, and he deserves to start, and he should be starting until otherwise, and that's kind of where it is. So.
And the same, I think, can be said of Dani Ceballos as well. I know he's copping a bit of flack at the moment.
See, I don't agree with that, but that's different.
Yeah, I personally think there's a Rolls Royce in there. I think he's got everything to be a top player. The only thing that I think
the same position every game, and then we'll see the best of him.
And I think he's got to work on decision making. That's the one thing I think that when he plays for Spain, I think because of their style, I think he's got that license to almost that tiki-taka thing is stuck in his brain from playing in the Spanish national team. And I feel like he's maybe just holding on to the ball a bit too much, almost like Jack used to do back in the day, where he just seems to want to do a little bit too much. I think if he simplified his game, but I do think there's a player in there. I really do. There's enough I've seen to think that he'll come good. Whether it's with us or whether it's when he goes back, I don't know. But the only thing I would say is I think we've got quite a good chance of getting him at the moment if we wanted to sign him permanently. So it's whether we do. But yeah, people are on the fence, I think, with that one, but we shall see. Okay, I think that was all the main questions, Danny. I'm just quickly scanning my timeline to see if there's any others. There was one quick one that came in late. Actually, no, we did answer that one, didn't we, Franz? We got that one done. I'm just quickly scanning just to make sure there's not. I think they were the main ones that came in. So thank you to all of those people who tweeted. And shout out to Dan. Yeah, he said, "Will it take Unai rolling one out on the pitch for you to go against him?" Thank you, Dan. Yeah, no, I genuinely, you know my views. There are faults in the manager, 100%, but I think there's also a lot of pluses that are being very easily forgotten. And one of the very quick, or two other very quick ones, just to give them a nudge. Alonso Spencer, friend of the pod. Hi, Alonso, said, if Emery was to pick Ozil against Wolves, would you want him in the midfield? Or who would you want in midfield? Sorry, with him. I think we've probably answered that for me. Torreira, yeah, with Ozil in front. And Mark Blundell.
That's a bit of a long one. Just do the first bit.
Yeah, it's a really good question, which maybe we'll progress into next week. So, Mark, if we don't remember which, let's be honest.
I'll save that. I'll get rid of the rest and I'll save that for next week, Mark. Because that's a good question.
Because it is a really good question. And it's basically the challenge for the pod. Come up with 5 arguments where we have improved in the last 18 months and 5 more why you're optimistic that under Emery going forward. He said, I don't mind if it's attitude, certain set plays or whatever, but come up with 5. So, yeah, it's a really good question. And I might answer Mark in my own DMs at some point with that one. But yeah, thank you, Mark. We will try and get that into a debate when we've got particularly a quiet week. I think that'd be a good one for a debate. Danny, before we begin to draw things down, we've got Fyffes Forum, have we not?
Certainly have. This week's Fyffes Forum was made up by me. Has Emery reached the point of no return, or do you still have faith in him? I'll read these out, and then you two can come up with a quick answer. The one-armed bastard who hates Kris says, Unai has not reached a breaking point for me. I have faith. Rennie A, for me, Emery has been past his sell-by date since the last season's collapse. Mark J. Fine, who is a friend of all of ours, he probably typed that while jogging. I'm quite shocked at your language, Mark. He's put hashtag fuck Emery. Sometimes, you just he should stick to getting snakes out of baseball gloves or whatever it was he got off spider that nearly killed him. Matt L. Roberts says, there is still things that niggle me about things like our results. If we weren't in the top 6 by the new year, think his job might be on the line, but think that the board won't renew his contract after this year. Yeah, I feel the same there. Happy birthday, Stefan Selby, long-time friend of the pod, and always stuffs money down our pants. He still hasn't told me what he wants me to do with that 30 quid that he gave us via PayPal. Emery seems out of ideas. The decision he is making are crazy, from the captain, lineup, subs, and his responsibilities in the press conferences. Very good point, Steph. Mayank, who said I can call him Mike, says the temperature is definitely on the rise. For me, if he can turn around the results, I'll keep him till the summer, but definitely won't extend unless the style of play is more clear. And finally, someone, I think he's Portuguese, Felipe Filop? No.
He sounds like a wrong on that guy.
You wouldn't want to let him anywhere near your Kit Kats or your bins. No. He says, he passed the point of no return last season. Unfortunately, got no faith in him! That's not right. That's not good English. He never exceeds expectations, just permanently disappoints! Is he talking about you, Kris, or is he talking about Emery?
I think both.
Probably is. Drew, what's your thought?
I think for me, I'm kind of resigned to the fact that I feel like he should go at the end of the year. That doesn't mean my opinion can't be revitalized. So it's not past the point of no return yet. I feel like I'd probably revisit that opinion after the Christmas period. If it's still a disaster in certain areas or it's gotten worse, then I think it will get to the point where I don't think it can be revitalized. But I think there's a way back in, at least for me, for my personal opinion, there's ways that he can make my opinion change. I don't think the fan base overall has gotten to that point yet either. I don't think everybody wants him gone. I think he still has plenty of supporters. I still think people are plenty available to be patient about it. For me, patience is waning, but it's still there. So we'll see.
I agree with you, Kris.
Yeah, pretty much. Like I said before, back him, don't sack him for me. But I do agree. As I said earlier on, he was given a 2-year contract for a reason. If we don't, for me, anything other than a top 4 finish this season means that we have regressed. That's just a fact. Like, I can't deny that. Yes, I think we have made progress in certain aspects of the club, and I do think that he has brought some good things. And contrary to the popular belief of our last couple of results with goals going in, I do think we are slightly better defensively. I did think he had a point there, but he brought it up at exactly the wrong time as we shipped goals left, right, and centre. But I think you stick with him. You give him the time that you allowed him, barring anything dramatic. I think if, as Drew mentioned earlier on, if we're sat here at Christmas having lost, 6 in 10 or 7 in 9 or something like that, and we've dramatically fallen off competition, or if we go out of the Europa League to some shopping trolley based 11 from North Luxembourg, then I think then maybe you have to ask questions. But for me, Arsenal shouldn't ever be a sacking club. We should be a backing club until such time as the right replacement is available for the right reasons, and it's done in the right way for me. So yeah, I hope he proves a lot of people wrong. Whether he's the long-term choice, I remain to be. I still need convincing, shall we say? But I'd rather back him than sack him.
Fair enough. Right, next thing we're going to do is gentlemen's nods. I will start off with the podcast ones. So we are doing Movember. So after this show tonight, all of my moustache and beard is coming off, and I'm going to look like a right fat nonce. And I should be doing pictures. So it's going to be me, Ellis, Shredder, Josh has just put a picture in our WhatsApp group. He looks like a 12-year-old boy.
Say, he looks like he's 13 years old but didn't get a first pimple yet.
It does look good. All the money we got from last Thursday's pod, from the weekend's pod, from yesterday's pod, live shows, and all the rest of November, all of it, every penny is going towards our Movember. And we've all grouped together. So we've got the ABW Movember as well. And if you want to give us money, do it via PayPal. Just tweet us and I'll tell you the PayPal thing, because then they get 100% of it. All these lovely people who donated money, 40% of it went to YouTube because they don't quite have enough money. So Michael Harniman, Jamie Fitzgard, Chris Lodato, J. Rob, Gabriel Germail Kaufman, Daniel Kupka, Jamie Fitzgard, Michael Hernandez, Stefan Selby, Unique 79, Sam Roof, Jim Howson, Jamie Fitzgard, Michael Harniman, Blair Slater, Camper Beat Camper Bat. Well, there you go. Lovely. Good. Unique 79, Gabrielle again, Stuart Shepherd Gevers, $20 dues, Michael Harniman, and then some of you have thrown money at us via PayPal. So that is going to be Stefan did, and Michael Harniman did again, Richard Morris did. And if I click on this one, it'll bring up a list of them. These are from Ali Gezginel and Loki 73, nearly said your first name there. Jonas Sektnanberg. I think we've covered all of you. So if you want to go and have a look at my Movember, it is mobro.co/the GFP. We'll be putting them all on our Twitter. And my personal gentleman's nod is going to go to our wonderful Arsenal ladies who beat Slavia Prague 8-0 in the Champions League. Van de Donk, who's my favourite Arsenal player, got 3. Maidima got 3. Little and Ruud got 1 each. And we beat them 13-2 on aggregate. Remember the old days when we used to win by great margins in the Champions League? Oh, great days. Drew, who would you like to say hello to?
No one's important enough. So, exactly, very New Yorker of me. No. I just, but thank you guys for inviting me back on. It was good to be back. So.
You're always brilliant. That's why I love to have you on.
You could tell people where they can hear Drew on other pods, couldn't you, Danny?
I could.
Yeah, he's on lots. He's a bit of a podcast regular on a few plans. He said whore then, but no, on quite a few. So tell me where they can hear you.
Well, I do some appearances for the Gooner podcast with the Gooner Talk podcast with Tom, and then I also write for Get German Football News. I also write for You're My Arsenal. That's kind of it. So yeah.
Very good, Chris. Anyone you want to say hello to? Give them a little nod of appreciation or a nod of disapproval.
Yeah. Two quick mentions and then 2 personal ones. Mark J. Fine, you mentioned already, and Richard Morris. Mark, your shirt is done. It will be going in the post probably early next week. apologies. I'm kind of moving house at the moment and life is getting in the way. And Rich, your shirt will be getting done during the course of this week and probably going out in the post next week as well. So I haven't forgotten you. Thank you very much. Thanks for being patient with me. Love you both.
Are they the Pirates ones, the giveaway prize thing?
That's
because someone did tweet and ask what was going on with that, and I ignored them.
Who did?
I don't know. Someone said, ask Chris what's going on with them shirts. What's none of my business. We've got your money. We don't care anymore.
Well, they're the two that I actually owe. So if anyone is asking about having shirts or donations, giveaways, whatever, just drop me a line and I'll sort that out. No problem.
Because you've got a lovely new third kit.
Yes, we have. We're going to be debuting that this weekend, actually, funnily enough. Cheap plug, the gold one. And 2 personal shout-outs. Today is Halloween. Most people know it's Halloween. To me, it's quite a special day because it would have been my granddad's birthday. And if any of you that know me personally, which is not many of you, but will maybe know that I grew up from a broken family in terms of my parents' divorce when I was very, very young. My granddad was an absolute hero to me. He was my role model. He was my idol, and I miss him dearly to this day. Sadly, not been with us for a number of years now, but I just want to say, big man, still thinking of you, and he's the reason I support this wonderful club we've been talking about tonight. So, may he rest in peace and happy birthday, big man. And also, on a similar note, most people know I'm obviously a big fan of my French football. Today would have been Emiliano Sala's birthday. He would have been 29 today. So just while we're all, we're not all, but while those people that are tweeting and sending messages to Granit Xhaka about his family and wishing ill on him and his family and that, maybe just take a second before you send something fucking stupid and remember that life is very, very short and tragic things happen to people, both celebrity and non-celebrity, every single day. Just take time to remember some people that are no longer with us, and your words do have effects sometimes. And although you might not mean what you say, sometimes that person might not be around the next day, and then you've got that on your conscience. So maybe just have a think before you abuse people. If you want to boo and you want to have your opinion on people, you pay your money, you have the right to do that in the ground, but maybe just think before you say certain things or throw certain insults. So don't want to end it on a downer, but just saying. And just thank you to everyone who tunes in. We do this for free, as you all know, and we really appreciate everybody tuning in. The comment section is always fun, so keep doing that. And, I know a lot of people tune into this just for the personalities. God knows why people listen to me rattle on, but, it's all good. And it genuinely comes from a good place. And even when I'm bastard, I know you don't like me, but it's fine. I love you. It's fine. Jace doesn't like me, and he still speaks to me. It's fine. It's all good. It all comes from a good place. And we all love this club, so hopefully we can find some common ground as a fan base and get back to winning ways when we play Wolves on Saturday. So, Danny, who's on the live show this weekend?
It is Mr. Davis, Mr. Dawes, and my good self, looking like a fat nonce. Because I've only got all day Friday and until Saturday afternoon to do my best to try and grow some kind of facial hair. Like trying to make it grow, because I don't look good without a beard. I've had a beard or a goatee for nearly 30 years. Only once in 2006 I shaved it off to scare Sean when she was naughty. But yes, remember, people, don't subscribe, don't tell anyone. This is our little secret. Shh. And I think with that we should close the show.
I think you should draw on a moustache for comedy purposes.
Yes, indeed. Right. We have had a lovely time tonight. We got it done in the exact 1.5 hours that we aimed for, because Chris didn't go on too much. Thank you very much for joining me tonight, Chris. It's been brilliant.
No problem. Thank you as always. Thank you to all of our listeners. Love you all.
And thank you very much, Drew. You've been very, very good. You've been the sense in this slobberknocker sandwich. That's not even a thing, is it?
Sounds like nothing I want to be a part of, but thanks for having me back again.
There's probably a YouTube video about that kind of nonsense. If not, John will know what it means. Right, thank you very much for watching. Remember, don't tell anyone we exist. Keep it a secret, and we will see you after the game on Saturday. Goodbye.